Welcome to the presentation, Next Generation Motor Drives Power High Performance Portable Medical Application Design, presented by Prab Gaurishankaran, VP of Engineering and Strategy, Performance Motion Devices. Please use the chat box on the right if you have any questions for Prab, and make sure to visit Performance Motion Devices exhibitor profile. Over to you, Prab.
Hi, I'm Prab Gaurishankaran, VP of Engineering at Performance Motion Devices. We'll talk about next generation motor drives that power high performance portable medical application designs today. So just a little bit of a background on Performance Motion Devices. We've been around since 1992. We make a broad range of products. As you see on the right, we do ICs, digital amplifiers, digital drives, motion control boards. And we are well known for the C motion language that makes you implement motion systems easier. We've shipped to over thousands of OEMs, and we've controlled more than 6.5 million motors, and this keeps ticking up daily. So that's a quick background on Performance Motion Devices. So as you can see here, our value proposition it's pretty simple. It's a plug and play motion control. We try to simplify the design and accelerate your product development. We try to do end-to-end motion control. So typically a customer would start with a board, and then when it goes to higher volume, they would switch over to using ICs and modules for production. And the nice part is the software ports over, and so you don't have to rewrite the software. The other part of it is we do a lot of advanced motion control, like S-curves, FOC, current control, just to make your motor quieter and run faster. And we've been known to be your trusted motion control partner, which mainly lends to, in the medical area, is the long-term availability, especially if an OEM has gone through FDA clearance, they don't want any part of the design changing. So we stick behind our customers. We still ship ICs that were made in 1992. So this is a quick quote from one of our partners, Ty, who's the CEO and founder of Trust Automation. So in their case, they're able to focus on their end application, and they don't have to worry about the motion control problem. And they've been using PMD for a long time, so they're able to start off and get to market a lot quicker because they're able to port designs and applications over. So with that, a little bit of a background in PMD. Let's dive into the topic of the day, which is design considerations for small portable medical applications. So as you can see on this slide on the right, there's a few of the medical end products that use PMD parts. And the key takeaway is the size should not affect efficiency. So the typical considerations that we get when we chat with the medical OEMs are weight, power, and heat. So a lot of the handheld applications, all of these come into play, and in some, one or two of the others come into play. So we'll try and dive into how to solve this, how to address this issue in terms of motion control. So as you can see, in motion control, what impacts size and efficiency are these three key things. You see on the right is motors, the size of the motor, the weight of the motor, the controls, how small they are, how efficient they are, and the advanced algorithms for motion control. So we'll try to hit on all three topics. Just to give you a quick snapshot technical background on each of these, and then we'll look at one of PMD's products that addresses all of them. And then we'll look at a few medical applications that use our product. So if you look at the types of motors that are available in the market, there's the brushless DC motor, there's a DC brush and step motor. And as you can see on the right, there's a few charts. The first one shows the power to weight, and the second one shows the torque to weight. And as you can see, the brushless DC motor has an advantage in terms of the power to weight ratio. Down below, if you look at the torque to weight area, the closed loop stepper, we'll talk about more about what closed loop stepper is, but step motors are competing for sockets where traditionally it was just addressed by brushless DC. Obviously, the advantage with the closed loop stepper, the step motor is cheaper, and you're able to get very, very similar performance, as you can see on the chart on the right. So we'll dive into the different motors and some of the control techniques that you can use to drive these motors. So just a background on step motor control, as we talked about the closed loop stepper. So there's two typical ways of controlling the motor. There's the traditional open loop control, where it's just the step motor without an encoder, without any feedback. And then there's the advanced closed loop control. So as you can see, the closed loop control gets you a higher effective torque and a higher top speed. And the chart on the bottom shows a problem with a traditional open loop control. So as you do the micro stepping to get to the commanded position, you have a little bit of ringing and instability. We'll look at it in further slides as to the reason for it. But what that equates to is a higher heat generation, greater noise, and lower top speed. So all those things could be solved with advanced closed loop step control. So it's quieter, you get a better thermal performance and a higher effective torque. So this is a look at a traditional step motor. So as you see the sinusoid there, as you change the stator angle, and the rotor will follow. And traditionally what happens in an open loop is it ends up at the bottom of the trough. And there's a little bit of oscillation at the bottom of the trough, and that's what leads to the ringing and the instability that you see, and a little bit of resonance. So this instability at the bottom of the trough is what leads to heat and lower speed. So the approach with the advanced step motor control is to try and run a step motor with an encoder attached to it, as to simulate a two-phase brushless operation with a step motor. So what you see here is it shows the closed loop stepper operating point is right at the equilibrium. It's no longer at the trough, and you are able to maintain the commanded position really well. And that you get a better position accuracy, you don't lose steps, and that in turn leads to lower heat and lower noise. So this is becoming more and more common, the advanced step motor control in medical applications. And the other trend we see is obviously with the portable medical applications, the trend is towards smaller and smaller motors. And one effect of that, as you see in the picture on the right, there's a lot of machining inaccuracies where the rotor teeth are not symmetric. And so that in turn comes back to you. If you do an open loop control, you see it as a variation in position. So the closed loop kind of solves that problem, because your position accuracy is coming from an encoder that's attached, and it helps improve the overall system. So just a background on how the closed loop stepper control is done. As you can see on the right, there's a position encoder that's used in adjacent with the step motor. So you get a feedback of the actual position. So from the host, you get a commanded position. So we do a delta of that. We run a PID closed loop, and we can also do an FOC current control technique. So for advanced medical applications, we've used all of these techniques together, where you put an encoder, get the actual position, you run a PID closed loop, and you run a FOC current loop on top of it. You cannot differentiate it from a brushless application at that point. Switching over to the mighty brushless DC motor, that's the Cadillac of this universal motors. Obviously, it leads the power to weight figures, and it's the most efficient motor type. It's been the workhorse of most medical applications, and there are newer vendors starting to come out with smaller and smaller brushless DC motors. You can go down to 5 millimeters when you get to the higher RPMs. The one caveat with the brushless DC motor is you have to do an evaluation in terms of cost and space. And then depending on your application, we can work with you to either pick a closed loop stepper application or a brushless DC. And this is just a background on a few of the commutation modes for the brushless DC motors in terms of control techniques. As you can see, we show all three variants. There's a sinusoidal, there's a trapezoidal, and then the Hall-based commutation. The most efficient one in this list is the sinusoidal commutation. You get smoother operation, and you don't get the bumpiness of the Hall transition points. Diving a little bit deeper into a few other control techniques for the brushless DC motor, as this chart shows a little bit more detail on FOC, the field-oriented control. So you get what happens in this is you have current sensor for the phase currents on the motor. So you see that as the actual current coming in at the bottom, and then you have a commanded current. And so you do a delta on it, run a PID loop, and then you transform that and you generate PWMs out of it to control the motor. So this is common, but there's a lot of nuances to implementing a good FOC, closed loop current control. So that's what PMD is known for. The other aspect of control is increasing your PWM rate. The typical application is a 20 kilohertz PWM. You could keep going up. So in this chart, it shows a 40 kilohertz PWM, but we can go all the way up to 80 or 120 kilohertz. It's tied in with the inductance of the motor and the size of the motor. So you can fine tune your PWM rate to the type of system you have and the motor you're using. So that was a quick background on motors and control techniques. So next, we'll switch to looking at advanced encoders. So one of the newer, more common ones are to get more precise position feedback is a SineCosine encoder. As you can see in the chart, it provides an analog SineCosine waveform, and that's how you derive your position. It's just a new signal format. The traditional electromechanical encoder is the same. It's just you're getting higher precision, more detail on position data from your encoder. Traditionally, 10 years back, the ICs and the electronics didn't have the horsepower to do the interpolation that you need to get to derive the right position. With the advances, you're starting to see more and more SineCosine encoders. So one of our newer products has a SineCosine encoder with support with all the interpolation needed. And this is a little bit more detail on the SineCosine encoder, and you get a sine and cosine input, and then this is good for you to go back as a reference. We'll provide these slides to you. So you do an algorithm on it, you do an arctan, you have a correction table, and then the interpolation factor is applied to derive an actual position. The other trend we're starting to see in some small medical applications are these magnetic encoders. The main advantage to them is they are hermetically sealed, and you get pretty high resolution. So we've seen applications where they've tied in magnetic encoders with SineCosine algorithms to get pretty high precision in terms of position feedback. So we'll switch to looking at ultra miniature motor controllers that we offer to kind of address all the things we've talked about, the motors and control techniques and the advanced encoders. One quick note, if you have any questions as you go through this presentation, there would be a chat window where you can post your questions and someone would answer them. And then we would provide a reference link so you can get these slides, and then you'll also get information on the products and the white papers from where this presentation is derived. So switching to the ultra miniature motor controllers. So this is a quick look. It's amazing how much technologies progress, just like Moore's law with Intel chips. What you see is on the left was a drive we shipped in 2010. It was 10% of the weight. It had a 500 watt output. And if you look at it, it's almost 10% of the size on the newer one on the right, the 2021, whereas you could get a 1 kilowatt output out of it. And this is a fully functioning motor controller. It's amazing how much technology has moved on and how much we're able to pack into smaller form factors. So this is a new product that we are launching. It's a PC mountable intelligent drive. So as you can see on the right, it is fully enclosed in a casing, and it's a pretty small footprint. It's 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches and goes all the way up to 1 kilowatt. It supports a wide range of user interfaces from CAN to serial to Ethernet. And this product it's an all-in-one. So it has the onboard CPU for running user programs. It has the advanced motion control IC and an intelligent power amplifier, all built into this small package. This is a little bit deeper dive into what's inside that drive. So as you can see, the C motion engine is what PMD is known for, where the user can write commands and C code and download it to the drive. It has the motion control IC for all the FOC and current control and PID loops, and it has intelligent power amplifier built into it. The other nice thing, as we talked about the trend with the new advanced encoders, this supports all of the new formats, SineCosine, BISC, which is a serial encoder format where you can daisy chain encoders, is supported by this. The other common request we get is separating your high voltage and your HV aux, which is the low voltage, to run the processors for safety reasons. So that way, if you have STO or some safety feature implemented, you could shut off the high power, so you could shut off the motor, but still your processors are up and running and can communicate back in terms of what error conditions are observed. So this is a pretty critical safety feature that's implemented in this drive. And as you can see, the N series drive, that's the new product. You can see on this visual here, you can daisy chain them in a flat architecture, and it can support all the motor types. So you can have a machine or a system with a combination of brushless DC and step motors, and you can connect them up, and it supports a wide range of host interfaces from serial to CAN to Ethernet. We'll look at a few more advanced, unique things that this drive does in the future slides. So one typical application, if it's a handheld, simple device, is having a standalone motion controller where you have a user interface and it's able to talk to the motor and encoder and has everything built into one unit. And this is a pretty common use case for small applications. But the next slide kind of shows you a more elaborate application where typically we would see 4 to 8 axes being controlled in a medical device. And the new thing that we're introducing is the concept of these expansion networks. So from a user point of view, the host is talking to one of our devices, and that translates the commands to expansion devices that are connected over the expansion network. So this looks and feels like a virtual multi-axis machine. So they're just talking to one device, and all the magic happens in the device to address all the right commands to the right axes. So one example you would see is it could be a pretty high-level command, right? It could just say, oh, extend your arm or move to station 15, and it'll know which axis that it's associated with, and it'll translate the commands. So from a user application point of view, it becomes a lot easier. And there's a lot of traction to this application where you don't have to deal with networking and talking to individual drives. You talk to one, and we handle all the magic of talking to the ones connected on the backside. So that's a quick background on the N-Series Ion drive that's launching soon. So we wanted to try and go through some of the design examples. I find it personally, this is more appealing to me. I tend to just go in and look at, okay, what case study or application is your drive being used at? And then I go back and look at the details of the drive. So we just wanted to try and give you a few snapshots of end customer applications. This first one is the centrifuge. So as you see, you can see on the right, there's the N-Series Ion packaged in a card, and it has all the host interfaces. And then you get a feel for the size of the drive. And when you download this PowerPoint, you'll get a lot of details on. So it's almost like a kit that you can quickly make a medical centrifuge out of one of these drives. This is the standalone application, and with the mechanical structure of it. The other application that we see in terms of pipette control or sampling, medical sampling, is a gantry. And in this, it kind of shows an exploded view of a gantry. And in this case, there are 3 N-series ions. This is that example where we talked about where it's a hierarchical structure. So the host talks to one of the drives, and then there are 2 drives on the back end in a virtual network. And this kind of gives you a view of the size and then where it would fit in the gantry. And you can appreciate how small these drives are. Another application that we worked on is a robotic arm and surgical robotics. One cool thing with this drive is, if you can visualize, you put one of these drives, you create a common module, and then you can put them right at the axes. So for every joint, if it's a 4-axis robot, you put 4 of these, 1 each at each of the axes. So the encoder, motor, and all the cabling stays local to the axis. So the only thing you're wiring across the robot arm are your host interface, CAN or Ethernet, and power. So it makes the wiring simpler, it lowers the weight of the overall system, and makes maintenance a lot easier. So if there's a problem in your robot, you could open the axis that has the problem. You would be able to take out the drive, just reconnect the power and networking cables, and you're back up and running. So this is a pretty elegant, easy to use, expandable kind of network. And the last one we wanted to kind of show you is a handheld stent, where it's a portable device running on a battery. So we are able to, we draw so little power that we can run off battery. And this application shows 2 of the N-series ion drives packaged into a stent in a medical stent application. So just to go back, just to summarize, so we started off talking about what the problem set is in a small medical application. And we talked about how to address it in terms of motion control. So the first step is you pick the right motor for the application. We can work with you as your motion control partner. So we would evaluate the weight and size and the controls you need. So you could choose between a brushless DC or a closed loop stepper. And the closed loop stepper, again, helps you achieve brushless-like performance, but at a lower cost. And then we kind of help with analyzing the control techniques that you need to use for your end application. And the other thing PMD is known for is we do a lot of custom applications. So we really work closely with you as a motion control partner, and then you're able to see where we have implemented some advanced functionality like path planning and user-defined profile mode. And there's a lot of custom features that we could add to a product based on the end application. And as you see, as the motor control drives are becoming smaller and smaller, you're starting to see them being used more in portable and wearable medical applications, which are battery operated. And I think our feeling is this PCB mountable intelligent drive, the N-series drive, is a game changer because it's an all-in-one. It has the host interface, it has all the connections you need for motors and encoders. It supports the advanced encoder technologies. I think it's a good starting point if you're starting to design a new portable, smaller medical application. So that's just a quick look. We are always open for more questions. You can reach us at pmdcorp.com. We will share these slides, and you will get, and we can share the data sheets and more information and example use cases. So with that, I'll end here, and thanks a lot for listening in. And you're always welcome to email us with questions, or if you need a discussion, you can give us a call. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this MD&M BIOMEDigital session. Did you know you can interact via the chat with the exhibitors on our virtual expo floor? The expo features top companies from across the engineering and manufacturing, design and supply chains, everything from materials to finished products. many of which are hosting giveaways throughout the week. Be sure to visit the virtual expo floor and set meetings with key exhibitors or chat through the message window. If you have a question or need help at any time during the week, click on the Help Desk button and a member of the Informa Markets engineering team will assist you.